Hi everyone, Linda from Let's Talk Prepping. And you know how you always hear, fix the holes in your preps, know what you need and get it now? Well, how do I find those holes? I'm going to give you some ideas that are going to work on how you can find the holes in your preps. First thing I want you to do is to go through every part of your day and visualize what you're going to do if you don't have electricity, from getting up in the morning right on through to going to bed at night. I want you to see yourself doing everything that needs to be done. What do you need? We're going to start with food, but just before I do that, let me just give you an idea. What do you do when you get out of bed in the morning? You go to the bathroom. Well, what are you going to do with the poop and everything else? We'll talk about that in a minute, but go through everything. How are you going to brush your teeth? How are you going to do all of that? Do you have everything you need to do that kind of stuff? So let's start with food, because even if the grid's not down, you're going to need food if the supply chain just gets worse, if we just don't have the food that we need, if the prices just get so high that we won't be able to buy food. So we tend to overestimate how much food we have because, we rotate it and we go to the store and we replace what we've eaten, and it just seems like we have an endless supply of food, but that's not the case. So I want you to go and look at your food supply and make a realistic estimate of how much food you have. And then I want you to try to figure out how you're going to stretch it, because it's not going to last as long as you think it's going to last. If you have a year's supply of food, you might need 6 years. How are you going to stretch it? A little hard probably to stretch 1 year to 6 years, but think about that. Maybe you can buy a lot more rice, and you can put rice in with the meals, and beans. Maybe you can buy a flour and learn to make some just plain old flour and water type of bread so that you can fill up on something like that. Maybe you're going to buy some cornmeal so you know how to make corn muffins or Johnny cakes. Johnny cakes are just cornmeal and water pretty much, nothing else, and then they put syrup or butter on it. So I want you to go through your food and just see what you're going to need. That's probably that's probably the hardest part, figuring out what you're going to need and how much you actually have. The next thing you're going to have to do is garden. So you're going to have to figure out how you're going to supplement your food by gardening. And actually it should be the other way around. Your food supply should supplement what you're growing in the garden. And that's not going to happen in 1 year. You're going to take years probably to be able to grow a good, sustainable garden for you. So, do you have seeds to plant next year? You need them now. How about the year after? Do you know how to save seeds so that you can use your own seeds to grow? Think about that. What are you missing from this year's garden? I mean, I've just started gardening, and there's so many things that I've found that I just had no idea about. Do you know how to make fertilizer? If the grid is down, you're not going to be able to get to the store to buy fertilizer. Think about what you need to grow an abundant garden. What are you going to do about the pests? What are you going to do about irrigation? So think about that. So check out, if you haven't done a garden, check out what grows in your area and find the food that'll give you the best calories, the most calories for growing, because that's what you're going to need. You're not going to be able to live on, say, celery and cucumbers and radishes and tomatoes. You're going to have potatoes and pole beans and winter squash and things that will last through the winter, because you're going to have to get through the winter. So actually look at your garden and look and see what you're going to need. Do you need fencing to keep the deer out? What actually do you actually need? And think about it realistically. Now, if the grid is down, water is going to be so important. You've got to have water to live. So how are you going to get water? Do you have rain barrels? Do you have them connected to your gutters? Do you know how to connect them? Have you bought the connection? You need a spigot on your rain barrel so you can run a hose from it. Do you have that? once you have the rain barrels, it's probably not going to be enough water for you. So what you're going to need to do is find out where you can get water and do a test run. Actually go and get the water and bring it home. See what you need. Do you need a better wagon to pull it? Do you need better buckets or whatever you're using, cans to get the water and to bring it home and to store it? Just what do you need to get that water home and usable? Is it an easy way to go get it? Is it through the woods? If it's through the woods, and you might have to start clearing a path. If it's along the road, is it going to be someplace where you won't be mugged or anything and somebody steals your water? Think about all these things and actually do a test run if you can. If you can't, visualize yourself doing that test run in great detail. And of course, talking about water, you've got to have a filter for the water, because if you're going down to a stream or to a pond or a lake or even from your rain barrels, you've got to filter that water. It's not going to be clean and ready to drink. So get a good filter, make sure you have a filter that works. I would then think about cooking. You're going to be cooking outside. Do you have a fire pit? Do you have a rocket stove? What are you going to be cooking on? Do you have the cast iron pots and pans you're going to need? I was trying to visualize myself out there cooking a meal, and I said, oh, I've got to stir it. And when I did that, I said, oh, all I have are all these little utensils that I use inside the house. You're going to need something probably a little longer and bigger to keep you away from the hot fire. So just think of things like that. What are you going to need for cooking? What do you need to take the pot off the fire? You need the pot holders, but how long will yours last? Maybe you need to buy extra ones. You need a place to put your pot once you get it off the fire. You're just going to set it on the ground, or you're going to have some concrete blocks to put it on. What are you going to put it on before you bring it in the house? So just think about all of these things. How about your morning coffee? Do you have a percolator that you can put right on the fire to brew your coffee? So I want you now to visualize yourself cooking all 3 meals, or however many meals you have a day. Visualize yourself out there cooking your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner, and just what you're going to need, how you're going to carry everything from inside to outside, how you're going to carry it all back in. All of that you're going to have to think about. And of course, where you're going to get the wood for cooking. You've got to know where the wood is coming from. Do you have enough stored up? Do you have a place to get the wood? How about a fire extinguisher? You probably need more than one. And if the grid is down, you're going to be able to have to heat and light your home. So how are you going to keep warm? If you have a wood stove, do you have access to wood? For 1 year, you might have enough, but suppose it lasts 2 years or 3 years. Where are you going to get that wood? Are you in a wooded area? Can you just go and get enough wood to use in the stove? If you don't have a wood stove or a fireplace, what are you going to do? How are you going to keep your house warm? Think about that now before it happens. There are many different ways you can try, from kerosene heaters and everything. I did a couple videos on this, but really make plans now. If that's a big hole in your prep, get it covered. The other thing you might want are some solar lights and some USB lights, the lights you can just plug in to recharge, and the solar ones work great. But what are you going to recharge them with? Do you have a solar bank, a solar battery, solar generator? Think about that. Maybe a small solar generator. How are you going to wash your clothes? Do you have a wash tub, a washboard? How are you going to heat the water to wash your clothes? So do you have a pail that you can put on the fire and then dump the water into the wash tub? Do you have a clothesline? What are you going to do? Think all of this through right now while there's still time. What are you going to do for sanitation? Where are you going to put your poop? Where are you going to poop? And then what are you going to do with it? So think about these things. It's not something that's going to resolve itself. If you use a 5-gallon pail and you have a bag in there and you fill it with poop then you have to bury it or something. And you have to bury it deep enough that the animals won't dig it up. What are you going to do? Think about it. You really have to plan it. That's probably my hardest thing, trying to figure out the sanitation. And what about medical? It might be a little harder to visualize medical situations, but if someone has an existing condition, what are you going to do with them? What are you going to do if they can't get their medication? Are there any alternative medicines that you can use? Do you have a lot of books on how to treat the various disorders? You can visualize, getting poison ivy and what you're going to do, but sit down and visualize what happens when you're cutting wood and you cut your hand. Do you have the blood clot stuff to put on that? When you're cooking outside and you get a burn, do you have the burn ointment? When you're gardening and you do something, do you have the medical equipment that you're going to need to take care of yourself? When you're bitten by a snake, a mosquito, or wasp or bees, what are you going to do? What do you have? Think this all through. The only way you're going to find your holes in your preps is if you do that. And you've got to do it, and you can't look and say, oh, it's just overwhelming. No, start with the main things: food, water, heat, and go right through it. The next thing you have to think about is clothing. Do you have all the clothes you're going to need? Because you're going to be outside. You're going to be outside bringing in water. You're going to be outside cutting wood. You're going to be outside cooking. You're going to be outside gardening through all weather. Warm in the summer, cool, hot, cold in the winter, in the snow and the ice. Do you have the clothing that you need? The heavy socks, the boots, the coat, the hat, the gloves, the heavy work gloves you're even going to need. And if you have growing children, you should probably get some clothes that are a little bit bigger so that they can grow into them and you have them. Go to the Goodwill or the Salvation Army and just pick up some clothing. Lots of places have free clothes banks that you could use. Now, the big one that I'm just getting to now is security. What are you going to do for security? If the grid's not down, you're still going to have to secure your food. That's going to be important, because if there isn't food to be had, people are going to just do anything to get food. If the grid is down, it's even going to be harder to secure everything that you have. So, do you have enough ammo? Do you have enough guns? Do you have a way to secure yourself? I don't think we can ever have enough ammo. What about bows and arrows? I had thought of getting a compound bow or a crossbow, but they use specialized arrows. If those arrows break or you lose them, you're out of luck. So maybe a regular old bow and arrow that they had, and maybe you could learn to make your own arrows. Wouldn't be great, but they might be better than nothing. So look at that. How are you going to protect your house? Do you have, traps? And what I mean by traps are, if someone is walking down and trying to get into your house, do you have some way to stop them? You have a board that you've pounded nails in, and you flip it over and hide it under some leaves, and if they step on it, it goes through their boot. Something like that. What kind of traps do you have? How about barbed wire? You want to string some barbed wire around? Just think how you're going to protect your home. You probably need motion detectors in all, I'm going to say, 4 corners of your yard or your house or your home, maybe even more than the 4 corners. And these motion detectors, the light will go on, and they should be solar so that you don't have to worry about them. And you might get extra ones because, again, the batteries inside the solar ones will wear out eventually. Do you have radios so you can keep in contact with one another? The handheld radios, so someone can say, we have a breach on Sector 1, and you know what to do. Maybe you want a driveway alarm. But you have to think of what to do for security. I think anybody could come to my house and just break the windows and get right in. So maybe I should be trying to secure my windows somehow and my doors Think about stuff like that. What's going to happen? So what I want you to do is just sit down and visualize a day. Now, when I get up and I make my coffee and then I open the refrigerator, whoops, no refrigerator, no electric. What are you going to do? Is it worth having a solar generator to keep refrigeration? Think about that. What's in your refrigerator? You're not going to be getting all those things anyways that need refrigeration. The fresh vegetables, the milk, orange juice, all of that. You're not going to be getting that every day. So maybe you don't need refrigeration. Maybe you need enough of a solar generator to keep your freezer going so you don't lose everything in the very beginning and you can eat it up gradually. So really sit down and see, what would a day be like without electric? And I mean where you had to do stuff. I've been out of electric before, but I knew after this winter storm or after the summer storm, it was coming back in a few days, so I really didn't have to do anything. But if the electric's going to be out for years at a time, you've got to plan on what you're going to do. So why don't you leave me a comment down below if you have any more ideas, because I know I've missed some stuff here, but I was just trying to show you how to fix the holes in your preps. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.